I know y'all are used to seeing me in the kitchen, but today I'm going to take you out to my garden where it is quite literally a jungle of a mess, but it is the end of garden season and it is time for me to get this garden cleaned up and pull out the tomatoes. And here you can see I'm showing you what I planted for the fall. I have a plan for my fence line because it is just a bunch of weeds and we cannot use the weed eater or it'll just tear up our fence. So I'm hoping this weekend that we can put down some black plastic and put my fence back down and maybe put some pea gravel along my fence line so it is not an issue. But one thing that I did this year that was really a gift to myself that I did not know was going to be a gift was I planted a bunch of flowers, and at first the flowers didn't really come up that much while the vegetables were getting going, but this fall the flowers have exploded, and I enjoy coming out here and cutting flowers and putting them in my house. They are just beautiful and they just keep going. So I'm going to leave them out here until the frost gets them. But I'm showing you my pepper plants. I have so many peppers this year and they are just so many. I don't even know what to do with all of them. So my chickens have been getting a lot of them. I've been fermenting them. I've been putting them in the dehydrator. I've been cutting them up and freezing them, and I've also been freeze drying them. So here you can see I only have a couple of tomatoes left, and I come out here later the next day and I just pick all the tomatoes that are left and I pull all the tomatoes out. But I'm just kind of walking you through my garden. The trellises are new this year. I had a tree company come and cut the trees that were right behind my garden because I couldn't grow anything last year. It was too much shade in this garden. But with the trees gone this year, I have really been successful. The hardest thing for me this year has been dealing with the weeds. In my paths, I put down cardboard. We get a lot of medical supplies for my son. So I used all that cardboard in my walkways and put it down for my paths. And next year, I may put some weed barrier down where I plant. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do that yet. I know it'll help me out. But I may experiment with it a little bit. Here I'm just showing you my chickens. I had to mute the video because my rooster was just continually crowing, but they love it when I come out into the garden and they know that I'm going to throw them some treats. So here you can see the mess that is my tomatoes, and I'm going to come out here and pull those up and kind of explain to you what I'm going to do to my tomatoes next year. I did try growing some things on my trellises. The only thing that was really successful was my cucumbers, but next year I think I want to grow some loofah and I may try some pole beans. I always grow bush beans and I always have great luck with my bush beans. I love to grow jade beans, but I think next year I'm going to grow some drying beans so that I could put some beans up and maybe can some beans that I grew myself. I have never done beans like that before. Each year I try to add in some things that I know that we will use that are fun. When I first started gardening, I planted things that we didn't even need or use or eat, and I've learned from my mistakes not to do that. So out here I'm just pulling a little bit of weeds from some of my fall garden. I've got some cabbage out here, some kale, I've got some beets, and some broccoli, and I think some Brussels sprouts and some cauliflower out here. Root vegetables and things like that grow really well in the fall when it's cooler outside. And here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to pull everything from the other side of my garden. In this video, I only pull everything up from half of my garden, and I have the other half to still go and all the weeds. And I'm going to probably here in the next month plant all of my onions and garlic. So I'm just going to take a little kale here and give it a taste, and I'm hoping to cut a bunch of that kale and take it in and make some kale chips. My kids love kale chips. So here it is later the next day. It is hot out here, guys. And if you want to know where I got my overalls from, I have several pair of these and I love them. I get them from Duluth and they're just great quality. I have several different pairs of these. So my fence line here is an issue. My tomatoes, I tried to put them in cages. I've grown tomatoes in cages before. It never does work out well. The cages always fall over. The tomatoes, depending on if they're determinate or indeterminate, the determinate goes on the cages fine because they don't get very tall, but the indeterminate tomatoes, they just grow everywhere and the cages don't keep them in. So I am going to just use the cages for my peppers. My peppers get really big and they fall over and they will do fine on the cages. So I'm going to save them, use the ones, the good ones on my peppers next year. And my tomatoes are getting ready to get an overhaul for next year. We are going to put up cattle panels next year across the back here. I'm going to put my fence a little bit higher because, as you can see, some things grew from the back in the woods area and pulled my fence down, and that leaves me susceptible to deer pressure. Deer's getting in my garden. I do not want deer coming in and eating anything because they will eat your garden. I also have groundhogs that will come in and eat things out of my garden. I've had turtles come in and eat my tomatoes, the low-hanging fruit. So I want to put up some cattle panel and trellis my tomatoes up on this back row. I think it will make it look a whole lot better. I'm also planning on putting down a weed barrier just for my tomatoes at least, because I know exactly where they'll be planted and I'll just have to make a hole for my tomato, and I think that will work out really well. So as you can see, I have vines growing in here, lots of mess. Some of this I give to my chickens and some of it I just throw over the fence because you have to be careful what you give your chickens, and they say that tomatoes are toxic. I feel like my chickens are pretty smart and they know what they can and they can't eat, but I do throw some of the things to the chickens and some of the things I just throw over the fence to compost. So I do need to still figure out on the other side of my fence what I'm going to do to keep the weeds out, and we may just put some black plastic down along the fence line back there as well, just to kind of keep the weeds from coming in. But the morning glory came in my garden and that stuff is relentless. It will come and take over everything. So it had already taken over a couple of my tomato plants. So I'm just pulling up all this stuff back here, throwing it over the fence, getting rid of it, cleaning it all up, making it look a lot better. And it was just so hot this day. I try to wear my hat out here as much as I can so that I could get sun protection, but when I came inside, I had dirt all over me. I had scratches all over my arms. I definitely should have worn a long sleeve shirt, but I know that it would have just made me even more hot. But I did have to come in and immediately take a shower, make sure I didn't get into poison oak or ivy because I'm allergic to that. But anyway, I was just trying to tackle this project, and like I said, I got about half of my garden done this day, and it really looks a whole lot better out there. It kind of looks sad because it's empty. It's hard to pull up everything when you know it might produce just a little bit more for you, but it wasn't producing enough to bring in enough for me to can or harvest in a big type of way. So I just pulled everything out. I really love gardening. It's very peaceful for me. It gives me something to look forward to every year. I am always able to plant something new, learn something new. Every year my garden gets better and better. I know so many people that plant a first year garden and they're always discouraged by the fact that sometimes they don't get a lot of harvest. But I really think that if you are a first year gardener, you just stick to it and you'll learn things every year. You'll learn about soil health and you'll learn how to make things better for the next year. and you won't lose anything. I mean, you do have to buy seeds. I do buy my seeds from MI Gardener. Usually their seed packets are $2 a piece, and you get a bunch of seeds in there, and it's worth the money. And I just plant and grow what I can, see what things do well in my area, take note of things that don't do well. Sometimes if something doesn't do well, it isn't because of my area. It may just be where I planted it, when I planted it, and it might fail because of different reasons. And I love learning and trying to figure out maybe what I did wrong. Maybe I did nothing wrong. But I think it's something to just stick to. It's really good to come out and be in the soil and learn what you can do and what you can't do. And I've learned so much this year from my garden. I had a lot of abundance from my garden. This is my 4th year gardening and having chickens also. And I've just learned so much from doing these things. I am a homebody. I stay home a lot. And this just gives me something to do while I'm home. I've also enjoyed taking in my harvest and learning different ways to preserve our food. Sometimes I preserve something and it isn't good and we don't like it. And sometimes I preserve something, it's our favorite, and we don't have enough of it, and I wish I grew more. So sometimes I grow a bunch of peppers like I did this year and really find out that we don't like certain varieties, and we end up giving them to the chickens, which isn't a loss, but I just know I won't plant that next year, or maybe I won't plant as many, or maybe I need to plant more. So gardening is just really a process of learning and growing and finding out what works for you and finding out what you need to do better next year, or something that may not have worked out for you. You might plant it again in a different time of year and it might do great. I actually grew cabbage this year and I've never been able to grow cabbage before, and I actually almost gave up. Now, I have learned that I need to cover it in the summer with bug netting, or the bugs will come and just eat it all up. But sometimes it's all right to let the bugs come and eat a certain crop so they don't eat another crop that you're trying to keep and save and preserve. If you look real closely, you can see my old cat Doc. He's an old soul. He is 15 years old and he doesn't act like it. He is out and about, loves to be with me. He's such a good cat. But anyway, basically, I just want to inspire you. If you can't do a big in-ground garden, that's okay. I didn't do one in my first year. I just had container gardens. But you just do what you can where you are. This is my chicken's favorite thing, me throwing them all the treats from the garden. This is my garden all cleaned up. It looks so much better and it's a clean slate. And I am so excited to plant stuff next year. So I hope this video has inspired you, and I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you have a great day. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.